1980's Airplane is often listed as one of the best comedies of all time. It was created by three comedic masterminds from Wisconsin. Starring Leslie Neilson, Robert Hayes, and Julie Haggerty, was a satire on the popular 1970s disaster genre, putting a comedic spin on a genre so serious it had never really been seen before.
I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Airplane is my favorite comedy of all time, and sometimes my favorite film of all time, depending on the day you ask. So with July 2020 marking its 40th anniversary, it really begged the question, what made Airplane so damn funny? To answer this theory, you gotta go back and figure out how did they even make this movie. The film was created by Jim Abrams and David and Jerry Zucker, otherwise known as Zaz. While attending the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the trio started a theater group called the Kentucky Fried Theater. There they'd put on all sorts of sketches. And it was this theater troupe that launched their first movie, a sketch-based feature called the Kentucky Fried Movie.
I'm not wearing any pants. Film at 11.
The film wasn't a monster hit, but it gave them enough cred to get some meetings. And they started writing their follow-up film, Airplane. In order to get material for their live shows, they would often record late-night television, and one of those nights they stumbled upon the film 0 Hour. 0 Hour was a drama from 1957, directed by Hal Bartlett and written by Arthur Haley. Haley went on to write the popular disaster film Airport, another inspiration for Airplane. They began to use the plot of this drama, 0 Hour, as the basis for their plot for Airplane.
Suddenly, half the passengers are struck by a paralyzing, deadly illness. And then, in the midst of the panic and confusion, this is what you find. A pilotless plane running wild in a stormy sky.
Can you fly this airplane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
In fact, it's mind-blowing when you watch 0 Hour how much they took from that film. YouTuber Mason Wood put together this amazing comparison. I put the link to his full video in the description down below.
Let's not kid each other, Treleaven.
You know I've never flown a bucket like this.
Flying is no different than riding a bicycle.
Just a lot harder to put baseball cards in the spokes.
Using all of these elements from 0 Hour, Team Zaz put together their first draft of the screenplay. And fun fact, the original version had commercial breaks throughout the film, allowing them to do sketches amidst the movie. But the story from 0 Hour ended up being too strong for them to constantly cut from. In fact, the trio still stands by the strength of 0 Hour as a film in itself, with Abraham saying, "It's a classic 3-act play. You meet a guy in the first act, you throw stones at him in the second act, and in the third act, everything is resolved." Now, while the film Airplane did fall under parody, their lawyers did advise them to try and option the rights to 0 Hour. I remember we had to find out what the legal definition of parody was. And as I recall, the legal thing was that you could take plot and occasional dialogue, but we were so close to 0 Hour that we knew it never would have passed muster. They were extremely lucky in getting the rights from Warner Brothers, only paying about $2,500, which is unheard of today in the world of streaming and reboots. Now, while their first movie, Kentucky Fried Movie, did get them some cred from studios, it was directed by up-and-coming comedy director John Landis, who would go on to make Animal House, Coming to America, Trading Places. But for their second movie, Airplane, Zaz knew in order to keep creative control, they would have to direct the film themselves. And asking a studio to let three newcomers direct a feature was a big ask. It was a major struggle to get Airplane greenlit. We took it out and shopped it, and at which point we got turned down by all the studios until we finally got to Paramount. As the story goes, it was Michael Eisner, who worked at Paramount at the time, who heard about the script through a friend of his, Susan Bauerwald, a script reader for United Artists. United Artists passed, but then she thought it was very funny and pitched it to Michael Eisner. Michael Eisner loved the idea of a comedy on an airplane, so he called Jeffrey Katzenberg to get them in the office that very week. Now, Paramount was interested in Airplane, but at the very last minute, a second company came in, Avco Embassy, who offered them even more money, which prompted a big struggle between the trio. They ultimately decided to go with Avco until they got on the phone to call Paramount and tell them their decision. Katzenberg came on the phone and changed their mind. I don't think the conversation was 5 minutes, but at the end of the conversation, we were at Paramount. He was really good, and of course, we're forever grateful that he changed our minds. Turns out they were really worried that Paramount would come in as a big studio and force all of these rewrites, but it turned out to be the complete opposite. They really helped us. Katzenberg took us through a rewrite, and it was at Paramount that we added all those flashbacks. They also helped us develop the love story. We were funny guys, but we knew nothing about crafting a movie. The people at Paramount really taught us about making plot points into jokes, about making jokes into plot points, and showed us places where we were probably taking too much time with plot and needed to make cuts. So while Paramount helped them write the script, and their script was heavily based on 0 Hour, the question comes of where did they come up with the jokes? Turns out they were heavily influenced by Mad Magazine. There was a regular feature called Scenes We'd Like to See, And the way they do it was to have each panel leading up to the final panel be completely straight. Nothing was silly. And then in the last panel, they'd make the joke and sort of pull the rug out from under you. We always felt we'd learned something subliminally from that. So we cast straight actors and used serious music, and instead of having silly sets, we put it on a real airplane. That kind of stuff allowed us to get more ridiculous with the jokes.
Cream? No, thank you. I take it black. Like my man.
And that is the real secret behind Airplane's success. Abrahams and the Zucker brothers demanded that this film be made seriously. Every piece of filmmaking behind the scenes, from the acting to the music, was all played seriously.
How soon can you land?
I can't tell.
You can tell me I'm a doctor.
No, I mean, I'm just not sure.
Or can't you take a guess?
Well, not for another 2 hours.
You can't take a guess for another 2 hours?
It was the trio's insistence for seriousness that also almost lost them their deal at Paramount. Abrahams and the Zucker brothers also wanted the film to be shot in black and white and on an old prop plane to match the tone and themes of Zero Hour. But it was Michael Eisner who actually put his foot down. He brought the trio in for a meeting and listened to their pitch for the film. He listened very politely, and when we were done, he said, "Well, you've stated your case very well. In fact, you may be right, and you may go out to make this movie in black and white and on a prop plane, and it may be very successful, but it won't be at this studio." That's what he said. And so there's the silence, and then I think he broke it. He said, "Why don't you guys think it over, and then we'll talk again Monday." He was so good at handling us. Of course, on Monday, we said, "Okay, we're fine." Eisner was right. By modernizing the film, it was more relatable to audiences, and the trio has since thanked him numerous times for his pushing to change it. But the filmmakers still got their seriousness in a lot of other areas, including Elmer Bernstein's amazing score, who before Airplane was known for serious dramatic films. And then when it came to casting, that's when Zaz really stuck to their guns. Paramount would suggest actors like Bill Murray and Chevy Chase, and I have to say, they never really insisted or tried to bully us at all with the casting. It was just that was how comedies were made then. And now, I guess. There was some resistance, though. I specifically remember Dom DeLuise as a suggestion for Leslie Nielsen's role, and I specifically remember Barry Manilow as a suggestion for Ted Stryker. But the key to the whole Airplane concept and to our shared sense of humor was to do everything straight. So we did. Fun fact for some other casting that could have been, Sigourney Weaver was also up for the role of Elaine, and both Bruce Jenner and David Letterman were up for the role of Ted Stryker. In fact, the filmmakers actually brought Letterman's audition tape to late night in 1981.
Because of my mistake, 6 men didn't come back from that raid.
7. Lieutenant Zip died this week. Dr. Chandler says you'll be out in a week. Isn't that wonderful?
Wish I could say the same thing for George Zip.
I love Dave, but man, that would have been terrible. Ultimately, the filmmakers were able to fill out the cast with who they wanted, including Robert Stack, who was their first choice, and as they called, the linchpin to their straight casting, followed by Lloyd Bridges and Peter Graves.
You ever seen a grown man naked?
And they would be saying the lines very hard-hitting, I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. That stuff. And so that's why it was funnier if they said it that way than whoever the comics of the day were.
Right.
But the casting director didn't understand. He was a great guy, but I remember when Leslie's name came up, he just said, "Leslie Neilson? Leslie Neilson is the guy you cast the night before." And we were probably 6 weeks out from shooting. But we were thrilled to get Leslie. At the time, I think people recognized his face for having been in hundreds of television and movie roles, but didn't necessarily know his name.
The Airplane thing came along, and I guess, was there anything at the time where you said, well, I better not do that, because it's comedy and I might ruin the image?
You mean, did I think that? Not at all, no. When Airplane came along, I called my agent at that time, and I said, look, I'll pay them to do the part, because I knew that if we did it seriously and did it straight, that it would be funny, because that's, my kind of humor.
In fact, the filmmakers went on to make several films with him, including The Naked Gun and many more. But Leslie Nielsen loved his time on Airplane, and all the cast members and crew always talk fondly about this fart machine that he would bring onto set to ruin takes. In fact, he did it in a few interviews you can see right here.
That's the other thing about the humor is you have to pay attention to it.
Sounds a great film, too.
You had not done a great deal of comedy before Airplane, had you? Or,
well, just a little bit.
But the Airplane movie has given you a whole new direction for work, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now people, permit me to be funny in front of the camera.
He would actually sell these fart machines to the cast and crew on set, and it got so bad that the filmmakers started screaming, "Put them in this box!" before shooting and ruining takes. But it was their insistence of all these serious actors that really was part of the secret sauce of making Airplane work. It just made it more unexpected. You can do a comedic scene like Jive Talk, but it's the surprise of seeing Barbara Billingsley, Leave It to Beaver's mom, coming in and playing it so seriously that takes it to a whole nother level.
Oh, stewardess, I speak jive.
And then add to that the priceless reaction of Julie Haggerty.
I can take grease and trumpet on some butter and drag him through the garden.
The film is filled with fantastic performances, from Robert Hayes,
I get so carried away, I lose all track of time,
to Leslie Neilson.
Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry I have to wake you. You a doctor?
That's right.
Peter Graves, Lloyd Bridges, Robert Stack, Lorna Patterson, to all of the passengers in the plane. Even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But for me, the real star of the show is Julie Haggerty. The way she plays every scene so innocently serious. You feel for, care for, and believe in every single joke. It's the mixture of all these serious performers coming in to tell these great jokes. The score, the cinematography, everything feels like a disaster film from the 1970s, but they always pull in that surprising joke, that Mad Magazine scene you never expect to see.
Hey, Stryker, how about a break?
Yeah, all right. Take 5.
Thanks.
The film is jokes upon jokes upon jokes, upon a strong story and good characters.
Would you like a little whiskey, ma'am?
Certainly not.
It's a timeless comedy that makes audiences laugh 40 years later, and that's something the filmmakers are immensely proud of. If you told us in 1980 that the grandkids of the audience would be the ones who'd keep the movie going, it would have been very gratifying, but I don't think we ever anticipated it. And it's one of the great thrills, I think, of all of our lives that it still remains well known. And that's time. Thanks so much for watching another Movie Theory here on Movie World. If you got something you want us to look into, please suggest it down in the comments below. And be sure to check out our other theory videos and support the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Jim never has a second cup of coffee at home.
Guys, Movie World is not yet monetized, so if you'd like to support more quality content and keep it going, you can donate via the links in the description below.
Joey, you like movies about gladiators?
Well, I'll give him another 20 minutes. But that's it.